Welcome to the Humanist Podcast. I'm your host, Ken Stearns. Join us on a journey where we unravel the intricacies of workplace dynamics. Morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Humanist. Great, beautiful morning here on the West Coast. Bright and early in the morning. We've got blue skies in Portland, which is an amazing thing that happens a couple times a year. And so we really do embrace it. I've got incredible gratitude for the blue skies now. Where I used to live in Southern California for a long time, you don't quite have that same appreciation at times. I think it's amazing how
spoiled.
Yeah, you get spoiled, and you don't end up really appreciating the simplest things in life, like waking up to those sunshine and blue skies. Good morning, Madelaine Weiss. How are you?
Well, good morning, Ken Stearns. How are you? I'm great.
Yeah, it's great to meet you. Thanks for being a guest. Thanks for taking time out.
My pleasure.
As we were kind of laughing before, you're executive career coach, life coach. So I think it's kind of funny because I spend a lot of time around a lot of executives.
Mhm.
I've been one myself, and I can't think of anybody that needs coaching more than executives, because you look at the impact they have on so many people, and
100%.
right, and somebody out of balance or really struggling
Yep.
has such an enormous impact on the culture of a company, the mood of a company, from that top-down position. And I think it's, really, if you're an executive and you happen to stumble across this moment, go find yourself a coach.
Yeah.
Go find somebody you're comfortable with to have conversations with, because my experience, Madelaine, maybe you can validate this because you see from a different angle. Executives have two friends in the company, the CFO and the HR person. And after that, they don't really have any friends, if you know what I mean, like close work compatriots, people that they confide in. It's been my observation. It's a small circle, whatever that is. It's a very small circle.
There's something called CEO disease that applies not only to the CEO, but it's a syndrome of feeling, I want to say the weight of, but I really want to say the overweight of responsibility.
Yeah.
So much so, and I'm sure a lot of people can identify with this. It's somewhere between easier and necessary, it feels like, to take on all the responsibility oneself, which means that they're so turned inward that, as you were saying, I think quite correctly, they're not connecting too much outside of themselves. And I didn't anticipate this part of our conversation, or I would have brought you statistics on that I have on a presentation that I give that talks about CEO disease, but most are very lonely.
It's a really lonely job.
Yeah.
It's a lonely job. And it makes sense. Those are your people, your two biggest assets, right? Your money, your cash flow, your bank account, your cash flow, and your people.
Yeah. And,
it's that bunker. It's a little bit of a bunker mentality, that World War II kind of thing where you're, as all the information rains down on the team, you start to go to fewer and fewer people for decision support.
That's right. There are 120,000 work stress related deaths in the US every year, and 750,000 around the world. And you were asking me about my backstory, like,
yes.
So my dad was one of those.
So
that's.
My dad had a heart attack, and I would just heavily suspect it was work related.
Yeah,
for sure. The pressures. He was a CEO at times, so I'm sure that was a lot of that was heavily work related.
Yeah,
the stress and the lifestyle.
Yeah, just the weight of the responsibility.
So how did you end up? It's because interesting job. Interesting role in life to be supporting CEOs. How did you end up here?
So let me tell you that story. The book Madelaine,
I
that
do.
the little children's book.
Yeah, I do.
She was not afraid of mice. She loved winter snow and ice to the tiger in the zoo. Madelaine just said poo poo. So she's my avatar, So
Oh,
I said poo poo too many times to my dad. So when he died at 42 years old and I
wow.
was 15, I went for years because people didn't talk to their children then, back
Yes,
in
yeah.
the day, the way they do now, like about their
Yes.
feelings.
Yeah, yeah.
So I literally went for years thinking my father died of me because I was so mouthy and feisty and a handful. And there was this one day at the cemetery with my mother where I broke down about how all my fault it was. And she said, "No, honey, it wasn't you. It was work." So, no surprise, I now
Ah,
help
what a mission.
um, executives, professionals, entrepreneurs find more hours in the day, more energy and peace of mind, more freedom, fulfillment, so they can live happier, healthier, more productive lives and not die at 42 years old. So I do that. I do that for their children. And
What a great passion. I mean, a fun job and a real reason to do it.
yeah, like if I can save one little girl or boy's
Yeah,
mommy or daddy, I'm in,
yeah, yeah.
or anybody else for that matter. Just doesn't have to be that way.
Biggest or most common, what's the biggest misconception about what you do when you meet clients or like that pre-client and you're having those first chats, versus what they expect the conversation's going to be and what it's like.
Huh. Well, let me tell you about a change that I made
Yeah.
professionally that I
Okay.
think might go to that question a little bit. Um, First of all, there's like a little video of me on these
Yes.
various directories. So, and a bio. So I think people have some sense. So I don't I don't know if they're surprised.
Yeah. Yeah.
They might be surprised by how happy they come out eventually, but
Yes.
but there's a change I made along the way. There was this book that I read by a psychoanalyst whose name was Alan Wheelis, and the name of the book was How People Change. And if I had to put the answer into one sentence, I would say that Dr. Wheelis meant for us to understand how do people change? They just do. In other words, as William James said, action doesn't guarantee happiness, but there's no happiness without it. Like
Mm.
you have to you, you have to move.
You have to do something. You have to do it. Yeah. You have to make
Right.
the moves.
And I think it became a pet peeve for me because I'm a licensed psychotherapist also. So it became a pet peeve for me that people would just sit there and yin 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 about their terrible mother or whatever it was. And it's not that you were saying how you have such compassion for
Yeah.
executives and what they
Yeah.
do. It's not that we don't have compassion, but people like me have to be smart enough to notice when doing that is instead of taking some brave, courageous step
Mm.
out of the hellhole that they've been living in.
Yeah.
They got to do that. And sometimes just sitting there, my mother used to call it a pity party. When the therapist and the client go on for 5 and 10 years in a pity party, nothing's getting better.
I don't understand that converse. That's bananas to me.
So that's why I became a coach
Okay.
because coaching in the training, it's about the brain. I've been studying the brain since I was like 19 years old for some
Yeah.
reason. I don't even know what it is. But I took courses on the brain then. I spent the summer vacation actually dissecting a brain at Marquette University once. It's like, who does that? But it's also, I mean, it's also very future focused, action oriented. So now at the end of every session, I do something with my clients that I would never have done as a classically trained psychotherapist, which is we define an action step.
Okay.
And we use the Goldilocks principle, which is the step is not so big that it's like overwhelming and shuts them down completely. And they're not doing that. In fact, they're not doing anything, but also not so small that you're boring your brain to death, So your brain has to register, something's going on.
Something's different. Yeah.
And it ignites the motivational system. So you do more and more and more. And before you know it, you're on this path and you arrive at a place that is like, look at me, I had a session right before you and I got on. And it was just such music to my ears to hear this man who was so miserable when I met him. He said, I'm just enjoying everything now. That's actually possible.
Yeah. You can go from miserable or not enjoying anything to enjoying everything. Biggest difference in him?
Well, I think what he was saying was that he wanted the world, this was it. He wanted the world to be a better place. What I really think he meant by that is that he wanted to feel better in the world, but he wanted the world to be a better place. And he thought the strategy for that was to get everyone else to see the world the way he did. So
good. That's a miserable life.
Yeah.
Right there.
So he was wrestling with his boss, and he left that job, and now he's the boss at his own company that's going really well, but he was doing it with his mother and his, like everybody trying to get his sister and his cousin and everybody in the family, everybody to think and be and do the way he thought they should. And I told him a while ago, I don't know if you ever heard of Eckhart Tolle's. You like him?
Yeah, I love him. Yeah, and I just keep coming. I just had that thought in my mind, which is, if you want the world to change, start with yourself.
Yeah,
the world's not going to change.
Right. It's hard enough to change yourself. That should tell us how ridiculous it is. We could possibly change anyone else. Do you ever try to go on a diet? I mean, really?
Yeah.
So Eckhart Tolle talks about the pain body. And he said, like everybody has a pain body. I think of it as like a little hairball in a dog or something, and some people are so filled, their pain body is so big. Yeah. And he said, you're trying to have a rational conversation with the pain, and you can't. And so this guy realized that his strategy to get everyone to think and be and do and feel like he does will make the world a better place. He realized if he stops wrestling with them all, he did it because it seemed like a good thing to try. But what he noticed is it made the world a better place to sort of just in the simplest terms, to live and let live.
Yeah, that's great.
You can throw your idea out there, but we all have the right and the responsibility to figure it out ourselves, so.
Guys, great. It's good to see somebody it must be really gratifying to see somebody like that get life now.
I couldn't, it was breathtaking. It's just, it happened very slowly over time. But today, it was like it was so there. And it was really.
Let's grab a question from the jar, because I don't know. It just seems like a good spot to
I told
pivot.
you I'm scared of your jar.
Yeah, that's kind of why I wanted to pull one out. I
know.
better better face your fears than just let them sit there in over my shoulder. Oh, this is a great question. A little turn for this. So a question from the jar for Madelaine. Who do you talk to when you need guidance?
Mm.
Who do you talk to when you need guidance? Interesting. That's a good one. That's a funny one after what we just talked about.
Yeah, that's a big question. It depends on what it's about.
Okay.
And I'll tell you something I'm really careful about, especially in these times. I'm very opinionated, and I think kind of like my client. And I'm aware of disturbing other people's peace.
Oh, I love that.
I'm aware. So like if I have something that I, let's say, want to vent about, I have to be careful where and with whom I do that, because I really believe everybody's trying to get through the day, especially in such trying, frightening times. Everyone's trying to get through the day in the best way they know how, and that we have to, I think, respect that and support that. I mean, I'm a pretty old dog, and I have done a lot of work on myself in my lifetime, and I read a lot and study a lot. I took like almost 25 years of Advaita Vedanta, pre-Hindu tradition, believe it or not. And so I feel at this point, I didn't always feel this way, but at this point in my life, I can pretty much handle it. I'm a pretty good decision maker. I actually give a program on that. It's called Flash. I teach people how to optimize their decision making. So I don't really need to talk that much to other people.
Yes. You've done the work
about my stuff. But when I do, I might even ask permission. Say, are you in the mood for this? And also, I'm just careful about disturbing the peace.
That's a very humanistic thing, right? Is to not, especially if you know what you want to share or what you want to express may disrupt somebody else's peace.
There are even people who feel as I do about certain things that are going on in the world today. But I know that they're doing everything they possibly can to avoid thinking about it. They're playing a lot of pickleball and golf, so to avoid thinking about it. So even though we're on the same page, it would penetrate the coping mechanisms that people are using to deal with such difficult times. So
very interesting. How do you find clients, or how do clients find you? How does that work?
You would think it would be by referral if I do such good work. I almost pretty much, I want to say never.
Yeah, I would. I think it's almost like it's like ask a therapist referral, right? I did, maybe executives are embarrassed to say I've got a coach. I don't know.
It's so personal. It's so intimate. It's so, I'm going to say, it's so precious.
Yeah.
That it's not the kind of thing you want to invite your neighborhood in on.
Yeah.
Or your whole organization. So I'm on a few directories, and I'm on Psychology Today and Zen Care.
Okay.
And I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm on some sort of LinkedIn thing, LinkedIn Profinder or something.
Okay.
So if people are on there looking for a coach, they put their request out, and it comes to my attention and I can respond to it or not respond to it.
Okay.
So those are the three primary ways that people find me. And I think it's the combination of the psychodynamic background and the MBA that appeals to certain people. And
Okay. Combination of business, you're a business person, but also like you've got technical training behind you,
yeah, and
technical
you know,
experience.
everything's connected to everything else. So sometimes they're talking about their kid won't go to school today or whatever, and sometimes they're talking about the grant they're writing. You know what I mean? So it's all part of the whole.
It is all part of the whole. Um, it's the biggest change after COVID now. Is it different? I should say, maybe, is there a change? Are people struggling, is CEOs struggling with different things than they were 4 years ago? Or is
I want
it back to kind of the same?
I saw a study. I read a lot of studies, you can tell, right? I
Yeah.
saw yeah, I saw a study that said that we are all in a state of PTSD from COVID and denying it. And the one of the examples that they gave was like they would ask people how their health is, and almost all of them would say, "Oh, fine." But the statistics were
Yeah.
that a large number of them had been diagnosed with a significant medical diagnosis since COVID. And so I think, well, it's back to the point I was making before. I think people are really trying really hard to get
Yes.
through the day in the best way they know how, because between COVID and the world wars and everything that's going on, like you never know what's coming tomorrow.
Hmm.
And I just feel like people are coping. Ernest Becker wrote The Denial of Death. It was a Pulitzer Prize winning book.
Okay.
And he makes the point, to put this one in a nutshell, that we're all trying to deny the one thing that is certain to occur. That each and every one of us is walking around worried about dying and trying not to die, but we don't know that. And then he kind of divides the world into two different kinds of people. One are the people who want to become
Okay. Yeah.
the power,
Yes.
and the other half are the people who attach to it. So if you look inside of
Oh,
organizations, you can see the people who want to be the power, and then you can see the people who want to, I hope it's okay to say this, just
yeah.
suck up to the power.
Yeah.
Because deep down inside of every single one of us human beings is the knowledge, the awareness that we don't live forever.
It's a real thing. Yeah.
My children make so much fun of me. I was preparing for a trip, and I took my son. I said, "Come here, I want to show you something." And I took him into the other room and opened the file cabinet and pulled out a piece of paper and said, "This is where the money." It says where the money is. And he said, "Okay, great. So we've been talking about you dying for about 22 years now, because I had." And one time we were together and he said to me, "Wow, we got through 20 minutes without you talking about that." Between the early death of my father, but also I had flesh-eating disease in 2004. And they said I had a 99.99999 chance of dying. I was in the hospital for 7 weeks. I had 10 trips to the OR, 6 months in PT. I mean, it was crazy. It was crazy. So I'm always prepared. I'm always prepared. And when my father died, back in the day, you had to wear a black dress, and I didn't have one. So now I have a closet like all full, all full. I'm ready.
I-
I'm
You're
ready.
ready. You're ready for anybody to pass.
That's right.
I was what is it? Jim Rohn. There's a kind of a motivational speaker named Jim Rohn.
No
And,
offense.
yeah, and I love one of his comments. He said, he talks about living life and, going out there and getting, and not being afraid because and he kind of, and he just mentions it in passing, which is, this is a dangerous game life. You don't get out of it alive. You know,
Exactly.
He's like, so you better, the point is you're going to die. You better live like you're going to die, live like there's no tomorrow and,
Right.
put everything you have into this day and appreciate this day.
Completely.
You
Yeah.
don't get out of this game alive,
That's
which
right.
is such a great reminder. And the way he addresses it is quite funny, but frank. And he makes a
Somebody
good
else
point.
said the other day, if you're not scared, you're not doing anything.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, and a lot of people, I feel, try to create a life where there is no, where everything is known and everything is,
Oh
everything
my
is
God.
predictable.
And they're so
And
depressed.
it's a
I have so
it's a
many people
weird thing. Yeah,
who have come to me thinking it's the wife or the husband or the kids or the boss or the coworker or this or that, and they're so miserable. And what we find out is that they are bored out of their minds and they really want to grow. And I always say the tree wants to grow, the bird wants to fly, and so do we. And if you're not, you're going to be depressed because it's just so, they feel so stuck and
yeah, yeah,
hopeless, and it's just boring. It's just,
yeah. The more and more predictable it becomes,
yeah.
um, yeah, your brain gets into a rut, and you're just going. What is it? Joe Dispenza talks about this, where the body becomes the mind, and your mind's not thinking anymore. It's your body knows what to do and just takes over the process.
Oh,
It's a great.
interesting. Put that, yeah.
If you ever listened to some of his stuff?
Many,
Yeah.
many.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
I
love
just
him.
yeah, the brain, because you talked earlier about the brain, and I think
Uh-huh.
the work he's doing with the mind is fascinating
Yes.
and super educational. If anybody's listening and you don't know Joe Dispenza, get
Yep.
on Google and find him and listen to his work, and especially the most recent discoveries. I mean, they're healing people, or people are healing themselves
He
through the
fills a room like with thousands of people, right?
thousands of people.
And
And they'll
and
do
does
group meditations
miracles in front of everyone.
and miracles now. Yeah, and people who have healed themselves through these techniques are now healing other people. They're able to project it, to project their energy.
He
And
also quantifies somehow, doesn't
oh,
he?
he's got measurement tools. He's got everything.
Yeah.
Scientists. He has scientists at the events. He's got tools. All
Yes.
of this is measured
Yes.
and recorded now. It's
He's
it's
amazing.
it's some of the most fascinating human work happening right now. I'm surprised this guy's not, on the nightly news, and every day they're not reporting on the people that are
Well,
finding out how
it's
to heal
because
themselves.
it comes across initially as so woo woo, but then when you listen to him, it's really compelling.
Very logical. I'm
Yeah,
a very logical person. I mean, I can follow the logic tree, and his stuff is you listen to it, and it
I
takes.
know.
I listened to one tape, one speech he gave, a presentation, and I think it's in London, and I've listened to it probably 30 times, and it's so dense, to understand what when he says a couple of sentences, it takes you 30 times. It's taken me 30 times to listen to it to stitch it and connect it to the other parts and to fully understand what he's actually saying. And it's mind blowing. I mean, what he's saying will blow your mind.
Well,
And
it's a different you listening to it every time, also.
it's a different me. Yeah, yeah. Oh, and and you can as you say, when you're listening, it's a different you, and you're also catching, you're hear something, and you'll hold on to it, like you're like, what did he just say? And you miss the next 10 seconds because
Oh,
you're
right.
trying to unwrap,
So you catch that.
this powerful thing he said, and then you come back the next time and you hear that, and you add it to your
Yep.
understanding of the first five, but you still miss the next 20 seconds because you're
When
trying to unravel.
when I was studying Advaita Vedanta, they used to read from the scriptures
Yes, yeah,
over and over and over and over and over.
yeah.
for close to 25 years. I was listening
Yes.
to the same stuff, and they explained what you just explained.
Yeah.
That
Yeah. Your mind.
it's not the same thing over and over and over for you.
Yes, you're picking. Yeah, you're hearing different stuff, and you have a
New
different level of
experience.
understanding. And
Yeah.
yeah. It absolutely powerful stuff. And his presentation now. I mean, you can get different snippets of him on podcast summary kind of podcast
Yeah.
summary skimming sites and stuff where they take parts of his message. I think it's probably an hour and a half long presentation he does. But I think it's over and over. It's the same, very similar presentation, and but it's evolved over time. I can hear the different years, and he adds in different stuff. But the most recent stuff is just mind blowing, and even for him, the evolution. He's saying 10 years ago, if you told me this is, people would be healing themselves, I would have thought you were bananas.
Yeah.
And then now we're healing. People who have healed themselves are able to heal somebody in the audience without them even knowing it.
You just reminded me that when I had that flesh-eating disease, the head of infectious disease was stopping in a lot.
I would imagine.
And they wanted to amputate my upper right quadrant, because that's pretty much the treatment for this disease, is to chop it off. And he looked at me, and I was very much into my studies at the time. And he said, they want to amputate, and I'm not going to let them. And he said, there's something about you. It's in your eyes. I don't know what it is, but I think you can do this. I think you can fight
You
this.
can do it. Yeah.
And he said, he said, this is the hardest decision I've had to make in my professional life, because if I'm wrong, you're dead.
You die. Yeah.
Now, the Advaita Vedantas would not have said it was me, because they talk like we're all part of
Yes.
a larger self
Yep.
that is present in all of us.
Mm-hmm.
I used to say to them at the beginning of listening to this, I used to say to them, I'm not 100% with you yet, and I just feel like I need you to know that, because it just seems so out there. But then I would find scientific studies that would be affirming the kind of things that they were saying. And I bring the study into them, and they would say, well, I'm glad they're all catching up with us.
Yes, we're only 25 years, 2,500 years ahead.
Right, exactly, yeah.
And they probably copied that from somebody else.
They were, all of my tutors were very high-powered professionals, data analysts, lawyers, physicians. They were really intelligent people who were studying this stuff.
Must be something to it. I'm going to the jar again.
Okay.
The last one was a good, that took us to an interesting, found out some interesting facts.
Yeah.
Oh, this is another good one for you. These are great because it's kind of peeling you back a little bit. In this
Where
easy
do you
way.
get your questions from?
Side story. I wrote them. I wrote them all. So a question from the jar for Madelaine. How do you decide who is and who is not in your tribe? Because you were mentioning before, you've got your tribe and people you don't want to disturb their peace, and so who's in Madelaine's tribe, and who's in, and maybe I'll add a little, kind of give you a little variant on this. How has it changed over time? Because when we're younger, we have a bigger tribe, it seems, and as we get older, we kind of we add up rules for membership. We have start off with nice to me or looks cute, and then it get the list, the entry list gets a little larger as we get older. So how do you decide?
When I was a little girl. There were two sides to my family, and one side was very social,
Okay.
and the other side was really intellectual. And I remember really appreciating the intellectual side.
Okay.
And you're right, like as a teenager, I'm thinking back. Well, as a teenager, I also had those two tribes. I
Okay.
had
Okay.
the
Yeah, you nurtured
intellectual
both.
tribe and I had all the popular people. But I noticed just like my clients who are so bright come to me for a match, I think that I gravitate toward being able to have conversations like you and I are having.
Okay.
And I think that's very, like I'm in a book club for that very reason.
Okay.
Not
Yeah,
just
because
any book club. I am so enthralled by what these people know about history and literature and the backgrounds of all the authors.
yeah,
I mean, and I don't know any of that hardly, but they all do. And I just sit there and I just like absorb.
it's like sunshine, isn't it? Being around people like that.
It's like a hot fudge sundae.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Ooh, that's even better than sunshine.
That's right. No, that's what does it for me.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Um,
And
what did,
fortunately, all of my kids, I have wonderful children. They're all smart and funny. And
yeah, so you keep, they're both.
yeah,
Yeah, no surprise, right? No
yeah,
surprise.
yeah.
Back to a work thing.
Yeah.
What what advice do you have for CEOs? You've talked to a lot, you coached a lot, seen them come and go, right, as clients, and coached, maybe seen some that just went by the wayside because they couldn't, they weren't the tribe. You weren't theirs, they weren't yours, and that's got to be frustrating losing, because you're trying to help people. Um, what's
Well,
that? Yeah,
one that doesn't happen that much. I think
that's
I
by the time you
honestly,
marry. By the time you marry, you're going to go down the aisle, or you're in it.
yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, they reached out to me for a
yeah, yeah.
particular
For
reason
a reason.
that's that's true. But I was thinking about, so not a lot of people like that, leave before they got something, which
Before
is a
they
good
got
reason,
something. Yeah.
to leave. But I was I was thinking of one person, a woman who's a very high powered executive. Actually, she owned her company, and she was in medical research. Brilliant woman. And I remember early on, she was saying something about having trouble getting out of bed. And I remember that moment where I think she was so filled with shame that she really needed not to be talking about more the kinds of things we were talking about. I think she really needed some heavy duty psychotherapy.
Yeah.
And so we parted. Um, and I hope she's doing well. She had so many personal and professional assets that there's every reason to believe that she is. But yeah.
Yeah, those are tough. What advice do you have? I mean, CEOs, just as a general, I hate to say like a big broad paintbrush, but if some of the commonalities they struggle with, and some of those early easy wins for you, what kind of advice do you have for CEOs?
Well, the thing you said before, where or we said together that it's hard enough to change ourselves, we can't possibly be changing other
Yeah.
people. The first line of Ta-da.
Oh, yeah.
The first line of the book is, a great life depends on a great fit between who we are and the environments in which we work and live. So a CEO can create the kind of environment
Okay. Beautiful.
that is nourishing to the CEO enough such that the CEO can nourish everyone else.
Yes. Love that. Let's talk about the book. Tell us, hold that up again. Yeah. Good thing we don't have the blur on. Getting
Yeah.
to great. I love it.
I like the stars.
Cover's great. Yeah.
One day I said to myself, all these people are doing really great. What are you doing? Because my background and training is, I think you can hear by now, is so varied with the Advaita Vedanta and evolutionary psychology and business administration. I mean, it's just, and I actually started out my career in a clinical chemistry laboratory. So I have all kinds of lab experience. Yeah. And so there's so much in the toolkit, again, because I've been around for a while, that I wondered, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Making any difference? So I laid out all of my files and said, what do all these people have in common? And what I found was that they all went through this 5-step process.
Oh.
They're all different from each other in age and ethnicity and occupation and all of that, but they all went through a certain process to get from me to their
Great.
flow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And give us a high level 5 steps. I'm taking notes.
Okay. So, well, you can imagine my delight when I realized it broke up into GRE. That was so much fun. So
the universe is amazing.
Right.
It's undefeated.
And it turns out to be my favorite word now. Great. I say it all the time. How are you? Great. Okay.
That's great.
So, yeah. So G is for grounding. And it's grounding in the belief that it doesn't have to be like that. In the belief that you can have a healthy, happy, productive life, and that you have everything you need to get you there. And so,
okay, perfect. Great start.
When people come to me, they don't necessarily believe any of that.
I love that. Right. They're not there yet.
Right. So I hold that space because I've seen it enough that I know what's possible.
Okay.
And I've lived it, So I hold that space. That's the grounding. I hold that ground until they can step into it and run with it themselves.
Okay.
And if a great life depends on a great fit between who we are and we have to know who we are. So the R is for recognizing who we are, not who everybody else thought we should be, or not even necessarily who we might have always thought we should be, but what really lives inside there, our hopes and wishes and dreams and aspirations and values and whatever that make up who we are. And then once we recognize that, there's the whole big world out there, and we go E, exploring. So maybe people come up with, to figure out what is the right environment. And maybe people come up with ideas that they thought of before, but they went, nah, I can't do that, or they never even considered was possible for them. So then, after we've considered numbers of these options, a lot of times people get a little too satisfied in la la land. I could do this and I could do that and something, but
I have a feeling I know what the next acronym stands for.
What is it? Go ahead.
Action.
Right.
Yeah.
So A is for action. And as I mentioned before, as William James said, action doesn't guarantee happiness, but there's no happiness without
it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You have to
And
be
then-
moving.
That's right. And then, well, to use the overused word, you have to manifest it. It's not enough to just think about it. I have seen people come up with these great humanitarian ideas and feel good enough that because they thought about it, but they never actually did it for one reason or another. And it doesn't stick to our own ribs. Like, you can fool other people, but you can't really fool yourself on some level. So anyway, and the T is for, and you could pick which one you like, either tackling or taming or tending the normal, natural, inherent, predictable resistance to change. That is a big part of the process.
Even other people's view of you as you change.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. There's actually a lot in the book about that.
Yeah. It's a big, I think it's a big thing, right? People like you can't do that. You're not that person.
Right.
Let alone your own internal critic. You've got the other people validating.
I was going to say that in the book, I call that tick. The internal critic is the tick. And well, a lot of it is they got it from the outside the whole time they were growing up, and now it lives in their own.
And now it lives. Okay. Oh,
they
that
don't
makes
even need it.
more sense to me.
And society does that too.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's not even. I mean, we don't have to even blame it on mommy and daddy.
Yeah, yeah.
Society does it too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Got we all like labels and identifiers, and we like to put people in boxes, and everything's nice and neat and orderly. You're out of your box. What are you doing out of your box?
When I was growing up, girls got married and were teachers or nurses.
Yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with any of that, but it was kind of limited.
Oh yeah, yeah. You just and
there's only 3 things you could do,
and the machinery kind of produced that.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it was, and the machinery kind of made sure that happened.
Yeah.
And how long has the book been out?
I think since 21.
20, yeah.
I told you I'm pivoting. I'm writing a children's book.
Okay. Whoa, wait.
And the reason, the reason
inspiration
is that all of these grown-ups, had they only known what they know now when they were 8 years old, their lives would have been so like, why does it have to be that people have to hit the wall before they learn how to manage their minds? Why not learn how to do that as just part of your learning while you're growing up? But
yeah, because we just try to teach you. We measure you against, we measure you against perfection. It starts early, and then you're good, but you're only 70% good. You're not 100% good. It starts early, right? So
there's this thing in here that makes up stories.
Yeah,
and powerful. We think they're true, and then we live the story, and my people learn that and can revise that.
Yeah.
But why not know that earlier?
Why not teach it earlier? I agree. I'm looking back now, I'm mortified at the education system and, the kind of people we produce out of colleges and universities. We have people going to Harvard are victims somehow of their oppressors. And they go run around and they make placards and walk around the hallway saying how they're oppressed. It's the most mind-boggling thing on the planet. We're it's still the greatest country on the earth for opportunity and, unlimited things you can do. Just being born in this country or being allowed to exist in the country is an amazing thing. And
well, how do we even know that's not part of what I told you I read in that study about the PTSD. I mean, people are really agitated.
Yeah.
And
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we almost all died during COVID.
Yes.
Everybody was at risk,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Well, maybe.
And
I mean, it seems like
and and
it
we
passed
think it,
without everybody dying
and we
somehow.
think it's over,
Yes.
but people are agitated.
Yeah.
Even,
It's
you know,
there is still that a hangover. There's still a hangover. It's pretty big, pretty big event, I think, for humanity, and definitely an interesting
I hadn't thought
study of the
about it much.
brain.
I think I was thinking it was over. I think I'm guilty of that.
Oh, I
And
think,
then
yeah, people want to move on. Yeah, people
and then
we're
I read that
humans.
article and I thought, people are acting kind of weird right now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's probably more of a hangover than anything else. But I think, getting people back to
Reading,
social
writing.
events, yeah, or yeah, that too. But social events and getting people out and normalizing, being among humans again. It's a good thing. I see it here in Oregon.
Yeah.
And I think I've seen it in the event industry for my speaking, talking to event managers. It's on fire. The event space is booming again, and
You know,
hospitality stuff is absolutely booming. People are back to normal. They're mostly getting outside and seeing other people. Back to being
yeah,
humans.
I know
Yeah.
that's true. But I still think a lot of people are kind of anxious and agitated. I
Oh,
don't mean like
there's people who.
individual. I mean like large scale, it feels like.
Yes, yeah, I agree. There's still some anxiety out there. I think, yeah, it was a powerful,
Yeah.
mentally, it was a very powerful campaign. I mean,
Yeah.
it's fear is
Yeah.
fear is contagious.
Yeah.
And, we're all connected, right? As you know through your studies, we are all connected, and it's hard to break some of those fear-bound connections,
Yeah.
because we are in survival mode at times. And if you're in survival mode, this is back to the, Joe Dispenza stuff. When you're in your lizard brain,
There you go.
you're the greatest. I love the way he says it, the greatest human, not achievement, but he calls it, I think he uses the word achievement, but or the crowning, thing behind humans is our frontal brain, the creative space. And
Right.
if it's 60% of your brain, the size of your brain is this part. And if you would live into your lizard brain, which was what happens in COVID and in times of stress and fear, we become very bad humans. We are not our best when we're living in the back brain. You're just literally in survival mode, and you can't live in survival mode all the time, right? Because it will give you cancer, heart attack, stress.
Okay. Right.
It'll give you
Cortisol.
diseases. Yeah, you cannot live in survival mode all the time. You can't be running from the lion 24/7, right?
Well, when you talk about what the campus life is like, that feels like there's a lot of lizard going on there.
There's a
Right.
lot of lizards. Yeah, they're living in their lizard brain, and they're supposed to be. University's a place where you're supposed to be living in your forebrain.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, that's you shouldn't be. There should be no. You got a house. You got a roof over your head. Should have 3 squares if you if you're a
I,
freshman and sophomore,
I
right?
think it used to be a fun place, right?
I had so much fun in college. And then, I can remember being stressed about my math test or something, or, some crazy
Because you were
professor, but
having fun, not because you were protesting.
I was having fun. Yeah.
Well, wait
I
a
didn't
minute.
have,
I take it back. What about in the 1960s?
I think they had mostly fun. I think the protesting and stuff, and, they were fighting for, they were fighting the war machine and the corporate, and the big government in the way, right back in the day, and self-determination and seeing the injustice. It was kind of a good creative process.
Mm,
I think it was still forebrain. They weren't living in fear. They were fighting a good fight in a way.
yeah.
It felt different. It feels different, at least.
Yeah.
Maybe my history is bad, right? But I think those are different times. Different times, a lot less complicated. No
Yeah.
iPhones.
Were they as much at each other? as it seems like the students are now? Or were they just against the machine?
Yeah, and I think, and yeah, and then there were just probably the majority of people who just didn't care. You're just going to school. I
And
think we still saw it was a minority of people that were raging against the machine, right? And turns out rightfully so. As history now, we look back and we like, yeah, that was probably most of the stuff they were fighting for was probably correct.
right.
But I don't think they were against each other. I think you're right. That is part of one of the biggest things now.
That might be different. Yeah.
What's it? So tell us some thoughts on wrapping up. Children's book. Tell me a little bit more about that. Tell us about that, and then
Yeah.
maybe some
So
closing thoughts.
I just I want to try to contribute something that will help children as they grow to understand that life is a story we make up with our brains. And to know that is to be able to make up a better one.
I love that.
For ourselves and the other people around us.
I love it. I can't wait for that. When's that coming out?
I just sent it off to the
goodness.
designer today. And
Oh.
I'm also thinking, like this has a whole chapter on money and it has a whole chapter on time. And I'm thinking I want to do a series. I'm using a little fictional character whose name is Brainy. And it's sort of like Brainy is the guide. Hi, my name is Brainy and I will be your guide. And I want to do one on money and one on time. And I also have one on managing your mouth, and it's not about eating. It's about, I don't know how to say it. It's about using your words well. Yeah, that.
So important. Yeah, so important to be mindful.
I'm still working on that. Yeah.
I was just remembering I have Toastmasters tonight.
Fun.
And I'm the table topic master of the night. So I'm going to bring the jar. And let people
the dreaded jar.
I'm bringing the dreaded jar, and I'll have people pull a question from the jar for table topics.
That'll be fun.
Yeah. And so when you were saying, be mindful of your words, and it's a reminder that that's kind of really what, especially in Toastmasters generally, but table topics for sure is that skill to get a question.
Someone taught me to listen to the sound of your own voice.
Oh, you should listen to your own voice on a recording for sure.
No. Why? No.
While you speak.
While you are speaking, it kind of anchors the mind so it's not all over the place to things like, I wonder what that person is thinking about what I'm saying, or it just keeps you like centered. Is that interesting?
Oh, listen to your own voice as you speak, and that does center your mind on yourself. Keeps it from like you said, looking around the room and trying to figure out what other people are, just letting your mind do it
from wandering
places
where it doesn't belong while you're giving it.
So where it doesn't belong. I love that. That is so cute. It's absolutely perfectly said. Madelaine, awesome conversation. You're such a good human.
Thank you. I love talking to you.
And I love what you're doing. I really do. I think it's amazing.
I love what you're doing.
And thank you. And the fact that you survived, flesh-eating, you're my first flesh-eating disease survivor interview. That's a whole nother.
I don't talk about that very much, but you seem to draw that out of me. So it's all your fault.
Yeah. That's a whole nother conversation. I'd love that. Yeah. How about any closing thoughts or any message for people?
Well, one of the things that doesn't seem to come up, so I always bring it up at the end somehow, is when I was studying Advaita Vedanta, there was this concept of good company. And the good company And in fact, I think there's a book with that name. The good company was not just about the people you people your life with, but it's the food you eat, the wine you drink, the music you listen to, the literature that you read, and of course, the people you invite into your life.
Into your tribe.
The very best quality that you can find
Mm,
in some of the cases, like the wine you drink and afford. But to bring quality in the company that you keep, and to be
beautiful.
mindful that that's a good thing to do. That's a thing to do, you know, not to be sloppy about the quality you bring to your own life.
That's pretty powerful. And I've heard that in different ways, expressed in different ways. I really like it. I really do like that.
Good company. Yeah.
Well, and bad company brings you down. Good company lifts you up. There's no, you, it's like that tide, right? We float, all boats float on the tide. And, if you bring in a good tide and good people, you float high. Otherwise you're grounded.
Yep.
Again, Madelaine, thanks so much for being a guest. Cool about can't wait to see your new book. Let's get you back when the book gets out.
Oh, thank you. And
Yeah.
thank you for your good company. I am planning to reach out to corporations who are filled with parents who are in the workplace worrying about their kids.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Oh, it's a good time then. Then a good time.
Yeah. All right.
Big thanks for everybody listening and just supporting this, especially the people on audio now, catching this at the very end. Thanks so much for hanging out with Madelaine and I till the end. Drop down, give us a few stars, and if we said something super intelligent, give us a note. Write a little note.
I would love to hear from any of your listeners at MadelaineWeiss.com is my website. You can reach me through there, and there are free blog posts and exercises and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, I agree. The website's a really good resource. I'll make sure I get that on the audio notes when we release the audio version.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Madelaine. I'll see you in 10 seconds.
Okay.
Welcome to the Humanist Podcast. I'm your host, Ken Stearns. Join us on a journey where we unravel